Well, and this is a great segue to our final chapter of the night, which is, of course, News and Amuse on Thursday. And look, they are trying desperately to censor. I don't even know if censoring is necessarily the way that you would describe it, but what Cori Bush has accomplished or has done already in regards to her protest, I think it speaks to a greater truth here, which is when regular people protest, they're regarded as agitators. But when an actual person who can pull the levers of power is protesting, that goes pretty far.
Well, apparently it worked.
It did. And for those people who were throwing shade at Cori Bush, shade on you.
Here's what I would say to people throwing shade at Cori Bush. Until you're willing and can do it to her in person, because that I would love to see. Until you will go.
Oh, they tried to do it in person.
Oh, anybody who wants to criticize Cori, please, by all means, try doing it, having a conversation with her, and see how far that'll get you. She is so real. I can't even say this enough. I said it the other night, a couple nights ago. We're going to talk about Nina's election, but this is what I was speaking with on Status Quo. It's like people want to go after Cori. She is one of the most real fighters that we've ever had. She's the only person in there that isn't wealthy. She's the most real, from the streets, speaks for her people person that you could possibly ever have in Congress, given the way it is right now, ever.
And she is dangerous to the establishment, extremely dangerous, because she's the type of person that could rally the black vote in a way where they basically become empowered.
Yes.
Where they actually think, yeah, maybe we should withhold our vote.
Well, look, there's a difference. There's a difference in the black community. You've got people like Jim Clyburn, okay? And yes, he will rally votes one way. He will. But Cori Bush speaks for the streets. And that is a whole different crowd and a whole different thing. And
Jim Clyburn is over 40, maybe 45 years older than Cori. So there really is a massive generational divide here with who the real voices of the black community need to be.
Well, look, the black community is not a monolith.
No.
Okay. There are all levels.
But there are those who we know who are working in their best interests and the ones who are working against them.
That's true. Cori Bush is working in the best interest of justice. Justice.
Yeah.
That's what she's all about, is justice. So, and there's people obviously that have a different definition of justice than we do.
Sure.
But she's all about representing her people, her community, where she's from, her people.
And it is a shame because the person who really was going to take the next step was Nina Turner. And it is a shame that she did not win her election. Now, we're not going to draw any conclusions right now.
We're not going to get into the details about the campaign itself.
But we do know that the overwhelming corporate special interest money that was spent in very specific ways, whether it was in the black community, portraying her as somebody who wasn't a real Democrat and was not literally bending the knee at the altar of St. Biden.
Well, in fact, the ads, all that they said about Chantel, the only thing that they said about Chantel is that she'll back up Biden.
That's it.
That's her only characteristic, is that she'll rubber stamp whatever they want. That was their ad. That was all they could even say about her.
And then on the other side of the district were the ads portraying Nina as anti-Israel. And that worked very well on this very affluent part of East Cleveland that Jen knows pretty well. And the problem with affluent Jews, they vote.
They do.
And they vote in mass.
They do.
And if the word gets around that somebody isn't towing the line in a way that is suitable to their liking, they will get out there and they will vote. And let me tell you, a lot of them are very prejudiced too. They are. And there was a lot of prejudice against Nina. This had nothing to do with whether Chantel was going to be a great representative of the Jewish community. The corporate Democratic establishment said that Chantel would be a great representative of the Jewish community. So by lockstep, they decided to go with what she said. With that said, Nina's campaign clearly made mistakes. We don't know all of them at this moment.
We don't know the details, and the little bit that we do know was not like, it it was sort of off the record. So we're not going to get into the details of the strategic logistical components of the campaign, where they went wrong, where we think they went wrong, where they know they went wrong. We're not going to get into that right now. That's a whole other, we'll do a post-mortem maybe at some point when it's not as raw.
But if you think you've heard the last of Nina Turner and the movement that she is without question one of the leaders of, I don't know what you're smoking, but this loss didn't make people sad.
Not at all.
This loss pissed people off.
Big time. I was in the room. I can attest to that. People weren't sad. They were furious.
Yeah. That's the next stage. A lot of people in the early stages of being in the political movements, when they get their heart ripped out, they tend to get very sad and depressed. And we saw that with Bernie. This was completely different from what I saw.
Oh, yeah.
This was like, oh, that's how you want it? Oh, we're coming. Okay. Oh, we're coming back. And we'll be twice as hard on you next time. And that's what's going to happen, because the only thing that the establishment, the status quo has is money, power, and fear. That's it. They don't have any real strategy. They just know how to scare the living bejesus out of people.
But let's be very clear. This was never about electing Chantel Brown. They could have found anybody to stick in that position, just like a manufactured candidate, doesn't matter, party drone, tool, whatever. This was only about beating Nina Turner. That's it. That's all they did. They invested all of their money to beat Nina Turner. They didn't bring anything new. They have no ideas. They have no platform. They stand for nothing.
Elvira,
she's vapid.
Elvira, I know you're a supporter of the show. I'm going to make this very clear right now. Here's the deal. The amount of money that was spent
that's all we're talking
specifically in the Jewish community by the pro-Israel super PACs was to paint the picture to all Jewish people that Nina is somehow an anti-Semite and she is going to hurt our people. Now, whether or not you want to get into the minutia about whether this is a wealthy area or not, Jen, could you please explain that?
Beechwood is pretty affluent. I mean, my husband's family is from there. There's regular people that aren't really wealthy there, but for the most part, this is a pretty privileged area outside of Cleveland. And it just is. It's pretty privileged.
And now, and on the flip side of what you said, Elvira, and I do agree with you, we don't know the full details yet.
That's another story.
But our understanding as of right now is that the Jewish vote is what decided this election. And from all accounts, the Jewish vote went overwhelmingly to Chantel Brown.
And we never know. You never know with elections the exact reason why people vote. We can't say, oh, they saw that ad and went and voted the way they did. We can't. No. You look at what the things are that are correlated and you try to do the best you can to understand where people are thinking. But the reality is that the pro-Israel lobby, the Democrat, which one is it? It's the Democrat. It's not AIPAC. It's a Democrat.
Democracy for Israel or something.
That PAC spent millions and millions of dollars to beat Nina Turner. And
almost 3 million was my understanding.
And they're really trying to paint her as anti-Semitic. And this has been going on, not just with Nina. This has been going on for so long as such a tool of the establishment. They use the Jews to basically squash any progress by using the anti-Semitic card. And the problem with this is there is real anti-Semitism. All the time, every day, more and more. I don't dispute that.
And we talked about at the beginning of the podcast how Debbie's reaction to Nina losing and the use of language that she implored.
She virtue signaled to the Jewish community.
But by doing it the way that she did, that invokes anti-Semitism.
And you know what it invokes even more? My wrath.
There you go.
So I really resent immensely. And I am obviously I'm a very, very secular person. But I was raised Jewish. I know probably more than most secular Jews would know, okay, about these things. And the fact that she's trying to basically, I feel like we shouldn't own her as a Jew. I do not like the way that she's referring to the crushing of vulnerable working people as a mitzvah. And I think that's just so It's disgusting. And it's like, and you always say this is the kind of thing that creates anti-Semitism.
Well, it's not just that. It's the fact that it's
fans the flames.
And again, that's the message that we put on social media today, because it's a perfect transition to the other Debbie story, which is not getting any attention.
Yes.
And it's a pretty serious one.
Yeah,
you know, Debbie comes out and is projecting herself as Chantel was the mitzvah. It was a mitzvah to support her, as if to suggest that supporting the corporate funded this goes back to biblical times.
Is a religious duty.
No, it's actually not. Supporting the candidate who takes the shekels from the banksters, that is not a mitzvah. That is a sin. That is considered blasphemy in the Holy Bible. You are not supposed to do that. This goes to the Old Testament Jewish Bible and the New Testament Catholic Bible.
But yet Debbie will use that to virtue signal to her Jewish base that she's got it. And
if you want to talk about the banksters' corruption.
Yes.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, among two other, and of course it's the Democrats because there's only 3 of them. We all know what the GOP's up to. But the fact that there's only 3 current Democrats under investigation for violating the Stock Act, which is insider trading. Of course, Debbie's one of them.
Always. If there is something where there's a group of people up to no good and there's only a few Democrats, she's always one of them.
Always.
Always. Yep. That, as we were just saying with Medea, she's the one who takes all the money from the pro-Cuba PAC.
And I know that there are people in this district, especially older voters, who think it's hyperbolic. You just want to get Debbie out. You have an issue with her. I am telling you, if you really look, and we're not going to get into the full details, but we'll just say that after the election, we came home and we started dissecting where a lot of her money comes from.
It's worse than I thought. But
even worse than you would think. I mean, we always say she's open for business, but my goodness, when you look at this, and again, when a story like this comes out, that she very likely violated the Stock Act, there's 2 things to consider here. Number 1, it's not surprising. And number 2, this is just a short while after several senators were caught violating it.
But I just think my problem with this is that I don't want to harp on this too much. And you know that because I feel like, again, this is one of those things that, and I'm not saying it's okay, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't go after it, but to harp on this with her, it really, to me, smells like going after Al Capone for tax evasion. It's like, first of all, insider trading is something they all do. They do. And I'm not saying it's okay, but they do. So to single her out for this, when there are so many more disgusting and egregious things that she has done, just seems kind of like it's very low hanging fruit.
It is, but it just perfectly ties into the duality and the hypocrisy of the way she conducts herself. And so
Debbie, let me ask you something though. Is it a mitzvah when you do insider trading? When you find out things and use it to your advantage and screw other people, is that a mitzvah?
Honestly, I think I hate having to say this, but honestly, I think she's a sociopath. I really do. I think she is devoid of empathy, and the way that she is so duplicitous in everything she does, it's just. I mean, look, a lot of our elected representatives are bought and paid for by corporate special interests.
It's true.
But she is on a whole other
level. Guys, if you ever get a chance,
really
seriously, and if you ever go and look at opensecrets.org, it's a great place to go for people who are interested in, you can track where your Congress people get all their money, and you can get very specific. You could get down to companies, you could get to which PACs, which different, and you could look at it so many different ways.
The most nefarious.
If you ever get an opportunity, go look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz Open Secrets. It's like
it's a who's who.
It's a who's who of the most nefarious actors in our country that are trying to keep people down. And those are the people that she takes the money from. And none of them are good guys. Like every single industry, whether it's big agra, big pharma,
just big sugar alone.
She $60,000
in one election
cycle from big sugar. It's just crazy.
But just remember, they wouldn't spend that money if they didn't get what they wanted out of it.
Well, They're right. They're not paying for nothing.
That's right.
So all right, we got to move on from her. But meanwhile, in the criminal underground, we have more stories.
We have one last story to cover tonight.
And I don't know if people can see the graphics.
Like, I don't really know how well they can
see. If you guys can see this graphic, this cracked him up when I made this last night.
But the Cuomo
brothers,
the Cuomo crime family. You know, a lot of people always wanted, for those people, again, this is probably way before your time, but I was told the story.
I love it when you say that and I'm sitting here.
Yeah, no, I know. But in 1984, and I believe also in 1988, the Democratic Party wanted Mario Cuomo to run for president. Now, I've always been told that the reason why Mario never ran for president is because he had way too many skeletons in his closet.
I would believe that.
Now,
and he was a good guy. He was relatively, I mean, he was
comparative to
correct.
what his sons ultimately became.
Well, Mario Cuomo was very, very loved and very revered.
And he was actually very progressive in a lot of ways.
He also really got along with people on both sides of the aisle. He really did.
He did.
So,
but unfortunately, you know, a lot of people like to harp on what they see with the Trump family kids. Well, let me assure you that the Cuomo boys are just as bad, if not worse, because they have a lot more power and they are much more heavily protected by the powers that be. So not only was Andrew Cuomo sexually harassing and assaulting numerous women, at least 11 that we know of, but his brother was running cover for him.
So I don't know if people can see it, but I have superimposed Michael and Fredo Corleone's faces on the Cuomo brothers. And I do that because if this ever does get back to Chris Cuomo, I really want him to know that I think he is Fredo to the nth degree.
And he really is now, because it's amazing how we always say the arc of morality is slow, but it bends towards justice. And in this case, it really does, because you remember how vitriolic and overreactive he got when somebody called him Fredo. But his actions, no pun intended, is very much like Fredo.
Well, first of all, something that, and anybody who knows me knows this, that if you tell me that someone doesn't like something, it just makes me want to do it more. Like, it just makes it more fun. Like, if he didn't mind being called Fredo, then I wouldn't have done this. This wouldn't be fun. So this is for you, Chris Cuomo.
And because he was just such a yes man, and he was aiding and abetting essentially his brother,
who's apparently a sexual predator. And
on top of everything else, because as bad as his sexual perversion is,
the bigger issue,
murdering grandma and grandpa.
How many? It was like 11,000.
No, like 16,000.
16,000 people. Like look, I want to also comment on the clip that I saw from Andrew Cuomo's what should have been a deferential apology and begging for people to have pity on him.
I told you, he wants to be a martyr.
Oh, he's doubling down. So he actually then puts together footage of all of the inappropriate ways he's touched numerous people, as if to say, look, I touch everybody inappropriately.
But then who did he show was also touching people inappropriately? The president of the United States.
Well, that's the other thing. So what I find interesting, so then there was a press conference and they were asking Joe Biden his thoughts on what Cuomo should do. Oh, he should resign. And I'm thinking, so we have Joe Biden, who's a predator, commenting on a governor who's a predator, that he should resign. And the hypocrisy is suffocating.
This is why the Cuomo story is very, very interesting, because he is really one of the most powerful politicians in the country. He really is. But this is a big club and you ain't in it. And when a high-ranking member of Sands Club is basically being kicked out, they're not going out quietly.
No, they're going to take others with them.
They are. And that's the thing about Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
It always comes back. This is why Jordan thinks you're like obsessed with hating.
But I still maintain that the reason why she stays where she stays is because she is in that club and she knows everybody's dirty laundry.
Well, and I also think she knows that once she's never getting back in.
That's very true as well. But also, they all protect each other. And so when Cuomo has basically been cast out, if you will, he's like, oh, okay, that's how you want to play it? I'll unleash it all on everybody.
Oh, he's disgusting. He disgusts me. He's filthy, disgusting. First of all, I never doubted Lindsey Boylan's story for a second. Not for a second.
Neither did I.
And I also know, again, as I've always said, I don't know a single adult woman that has not been violated. I have no reason to not believe anybody. And quite honestly, his reaction to it spoke more than even the whole original part of it. Like the whole thing is disgusting. He is a filthy. And the other thing about him and Biden, it's not a sex thing.
That's power.
It's this entitlement, entitlement that you're just entitled to put your hands up. I mean, even with Lucy Flores and Joe Biden, and I go back to this, to me, that set me off more than anything.